Alright, so I recently watched a series called Jessica Jones. It's not an anime, for once, or a game. Kind of weird. Maybe a first for me. Anyway, I'm not a fan. I think there are issues here, issues which aren't rubbing just me the wrong way. And also plenty of problems which I personally dislike immensely. Which is why I wouldn't recommend it, although there's a significant but there. Still not enough though. What is it about? The life of a superhero is rife with issues. After all, it doesn't pay the bills, the people don't even thank you, and being in constant life or death situation takes its toll. All around unpleasant, so this is a story of a former superhero who retires and opens up a private investigator business, helping people her own way. So first and foremost, this is what drew my attention to the series in the first place. David Tennant. I think I'm rapidly becoming a fan of this actor. The first time I've heard of him was probably in Final Space, and there he just sounded weird. Don't know if his direction was off or he was trying something different, but not a fan. After that though, DuckTales. And dude looks like a twig, perpetually stuck somewhere between 30 and 40, and yet he perfectly nails the voice of an old man. So I just had to see more of him in something. He's incredible in Jessica Jones, even with how goofy he says, Jessica! Somehow the man could be telling people to stab themselves, have them do it, and still remain charming. That takes effort. He's like the polar opposite of me. I'd say if there's a reason to watch this show, then this is it. He acts out the obsession, an abusive relationship, and the unbelievable amount of narcissism, and somehow comes across as charming. Absolutely ludicrous. I'm gonna keep looking for more stuff with him in it. But aside from that, I struggle to think of anything to praise. The ideas there and the relationship are sometimes interesting, but for the most part end up going in a direction which are either boring or disappointing. Take with Druggy for example. Jess sticks out for him and helps him get clean, so he turns his life around and becomes a man whore. After which he is basically a puppy, following her around and doing whatever she says, despite her acting like he's a useless nuisance. And eventually he goes to work for another detective agency in a slick suit, working for a man who shot Jessica. This transition from one felt idiotic, and the second pretty much another example of an abusive relationship. Heck, everything in this is an abusive relationship. There is no two people in this who treat each other with respect and value their opinions. That is probably the reason why it feels so mean-spirited. Everyone is just a jerk. And Kilgrave was the only one who was fun to witness acting like that. Everyone else is just boring and mean. Main character can be enjoyable to see and follow, but at the end of the day, she just is depressing and very one note. Obviously the idea behind this entire thing is dealing with psychological issues, but I kinda wanna see some progress then. And she just keeps going the same way and keeps making the same mistakes and keeps being a bitch and keeps sleeping around and drinking almost half as much as an average Russian. There's just not enough to keep going here. I want to see her overcome her problems, or, I don't know, weaponize being a bitch, or find someone who'd help her move on, or anything. She's just stuck and doesn't progress. Or at least not fast enough for me to care. And the story is kinda, First season is about Kilgrave, and there's basically nothing else happening. Hints about evil experiment people dropped here and there, but it's not the focus. That's in season 2. Which is 100% the focus here, and it feels almost like a retcon. Where was the mom before then? Why didn't she help with Kilgrave? Why didn't any other modified people show up? Why is there Luke Cage appearing everywhere, every 5 seconds? To me it felt like season 2 needed to happen during season 1, and there would be no need for bonus airtime. The episodes don't have enough packed into them to justify being so long. I guess I'm too used to anime and borderline ADD there, but then again, I've had no problems watching Better Call Saul just weeks prior. Same with Orville, although the third season of Orville goes too long for sure. Anyway, the story of Jessica Jones was like someone's first foray into writing, without an ability to juggle multiple overarching storylines. Although I do think the things other people go through were done really well. Jerry and Trish were, for example, those two have quite a bit going on. Thing is though, I don't really give a crap. It's like focusing on a random cop after Jessica met him. Sure, I'd be curious to know how their lives changed, but there is just too much focus on these side characters. Which leads into my belief as to what the main issue is. Jessica is a side character. She doesn't have enough to carry the story as a main, which is why it's diluted by the other stuff. I think she'd be a great side character, which is a little ironic because that's the reason I even recognized her as Jane from Breaking Bad. Kristen did an amazing job. She was perfect as Jane, just the right amount of bitchiness, but she still cared for Jesse, and there were definitely some daddy issues. I think she shines in a role like that. Here she needs to also pretend to be a badass and make hard-boiled monologue. She can't. She totally failed in my opinion. Just no offense, but sorry, I feel like that. Anytime she needed to be tough, I just did not buy it. She always looked like she is tired of being there, and anytime she did those, "Life is a shithole, it chews you out, leaving nothing behind." I don't have a quote, just made this up. Anytime she does this sort of quote, it doesn't sound right, and that's a failure mainly on the writer, I'd say. Also, another thing to bitch about are the sex scenes. 1 or 2 times it's implied the two characters did it. The two of them look at each other, there's a pause as they stare, and then a jump cut to a door and shadows moving behind it. There's something comedic about that as well. That was fine. Problem was like 5 million other sex scenes. Where they show the softcore porn. Am I a weird one? I seriously don't get it. This wouldn't even look interesting to me if I was horny. It's just boring. Minutes of ooh, yup. Why even have this shit in? Hell, I'd rather have a moment of Jessica just sitting there, in silence, looking stuff up. Then she sees something like news of kids losing their parents in a car accident. Then she gets up with a bottle and there's a jump cut to her going to the roof. So she just sits there, drinking the night away. No words, just music and acting. This would have been infinitely better to show instead. Now when I think about it, characters don't really have much time to breathe. They always do something, always bickering or shouting at each other or running somewhere. They don't have an idle moment. I can't imagine any of them on a weekend. I can totally imagine Jane Margolis on her day out, drawing all day while hearing Jessie do something stupid behind the wall. So she has a subtle grin as she sits there and adds something goofy to the tattoo design. So I'd say not to watch it, or just watch the first season. I've seen the first and second, and honestly, finished it yesterday. I remember a few events, none of the lines, and nothing more. There's a third one too, but I just don't care enough to watch it. Maybe some other time.